Folks might remember that back in November, the Rebel.media traveled to India to cover COP7. That was the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, the World Health Organization's summit against tobacco. You might remember that the Rebel.media, as well as all of the world's media, were kicked out from the conference, voted unanimously by all 180 signatories to that framework against tobacco. Since that time, I've been reached out to by several people who felt like their voices have not been heard as part of this regulatory war against personal choice and tobacco. Now, before I proceed any further, I do want to say that we at the Rebel are not sponsored by Big Tobacco, even if those were some of the accusations that were pushed against us. I'm joined now by Imperial Tobacco Canada's Director of Corporate and Regulatory Affairs, Eric Gagnon. Thanks very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I do want to say in an effort for full disclosure, Imperial Tobacco Canada reached out to us.
Yes.
I think that you saw our coverage, the fact that the media was kicked out, the fact that the tobacco industry plays no role in this framework. For you, if you could just speak to our audience a little bit about how you view this COP7 globalist, unelected, unaccountable bodies' influence on your industry.
Yeah, I think it was important for us to reach out to you, and we do it to other media also, because we want to share what's happening in tobacco regulation in Canada today. I mean, you saw it at COP7, and that's at the global level, but basically, the tobacco agenda is driven by a very small but very vocal group of anti-tobacco lobbyists in Canada right now. And these people have nobody to answer to. They meet Health Canada on a regular basis. They drive the agenda. And they hide behind the fact that they're supposed to be pro-health, but at the end of the day, they're more anti-industry than they are pro-health. And that's what's driving some of the regulations today, and that's why we feel it's important for us to speak out, to share at least our point of view, and so that people can make their own decision based on what's coming up in terms of regulation moving forward.
You know, I find it interesting that you say anti-industry, because what I hear is anti-capitalism. It is absolutely no mystery to most adults who are of legal age to smoke that smoking is not good for your health. And I say that as someone who does smoke, full disclosure. But then again, there are a lot of, and studies have shown this time and time again, that people actually overestimate the risks. But that's okay. As an adult, I should be free to make my own risk assessment, make my own personal choice without being hit by, you know, percentages in the double digits. Yeah. And you, as the supplier to my demand, my will to smoke tobacco, and yes, ingest nicotine, your industry is hit with calls for plain packaging and higher just regulatory pushes. Right. So talk to me a little bit about that. What's next for the tobacco industry? What do you view as is the war on e-cigarettes?
You know, you talked about plain packaging, and that's, I think, is a good example. Right now in Canada, for your viewers, some of them may know, but there's already a 75% health warning on the cigarette pack.
That's right.
Packs are hidden from public view, right? So I think that an individual, an adult that makes the choice to smoke today, makes it with knowing all the risks associated with smoking.
Absolutely.
Because there are some important risks associated with smoking. It should not be consumed by kids. It should be consumed by adults that make an informed decision. But then to say that by taking that 25% off of the pack, which is only the trademark, that people will stop smoking or that kids won't start smoking, that is ridiculous. And that's what we're opposing. We're not opposing regulation in general, but we're opposing excessive and regulations such as plain packaging, because we believe that as a legal company, because it's still legal to smoke in Canada, as a legal company, we have the right to have our trademarks on our product. And that's what we believe. And today's current regulatory framework provides sufficient information for consumers to make an informed decision.
And that's what it comes down to. And it's so interesting that you touch on this. Really, there are myths around smoking, that this makes it attractive to children. This makes it attractive to women. For instance, we've seen a call for a ban and an actual ban instituted across Canada when it comes to menthol cigarettes.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about menthol to different, because provinces have banned menthol, some provinces, most of them. But what's even mind-boggling on menthol is that there's more illegal menthol brands in Canada today than there are legal menthol brands. So basically what the government is saying is, we're going to ban it, you know, menthol, we're going to ban it from the legal channel, but people are buying it illegally. So we're only shifting the consumer to an illegal market, which makes no sense. But again, we go back to why are we doing that? And again, I have to go back to the anti-tobacco lobbyists. I mean, these guys, they're the ones who are driving the agenda. I mean, you know, when you were at COP7, the person who gave you an interview is Rob Cunningham, who works for the Canadian Cancer Society. He doesn't even work for Health Canada. And I'm asking myself, how come the spokesperson from the Canadian Cancer Society is at COP7, driving the agenda with Health Canada, and giving an interview on behalf of the Canadian delegation when he's an observer. And that, for me, is what is happening in Canada on tobacco today.
You know, there was a fascinating study out by Public Health England that showed that electronic cigarettes were 95% less harmful than tobacco. And I know that a lot of big tobacco companies are now purchasing e-cigarette companies and getting involved in the industry because they know that it is a cessation tool. They know that this is where a lot of smokers want to go eventually because they love the nicotine, but they don't love the smoking parts of it. I'm just wondering if you could talk to me a little bit about, is there a conflict of interest when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry that is, it totally dominates this FCTC, this COP7, this World Health Organization framework body. So the pharmaceutical industry is there. They've got their hands in pies like nicotine gum and other sort of smoking cessation. Is there a conflict of interest when they say, e-cigarette folks, you're not allowed in here, and by the way, we're going to work to ban you?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a conflict of interest. What I do believe is that there's been some misinformation on e-cigarettes. I mean, to your point, the Royal College of Physicians has said publicly that it's 95% safer than a traditional cigarette. But some of the groups are saying in Canada, well, we got to be careful. We don't know the long-term effect. But we do know that the traditional combustible cigarette, the impact of that, right? And so I think if we really want to talk about public health and trying to get smokers to quit, e-cigarette is just an avenue that needs to be recognized by the government, right? Now there is a bill in place right now. The government is considering regulating e-cigarettes, which is good because all the products that are sold today with nicotine are illegal. So at least that's happening is a good thing, right? But again, I mean, is there some conflict of interest? Probably. There has to be at one point, you know, pharmaceutical, are they funding the health groups? How is that all operating? And for them, it might be a competition on the market, right? If e-cigarettes are available, maybe it's going to be more difficult to sell some of the other products to stop smoking. But I think that's a question to ask for the groups that are funded by the pharmaceutical companies and have them respond to that question.
You know, we have seen, especially over the course of this past year, various levels of government react to electronic cigarettes and, of course, in the ongoing war against smoking in general. And I worry that these folks are being pressured, the government, our legislatures, are being pressured by these special interest groups as opposed to looking at the science. And, you know, you mentioned Rob Cunningham being part of the Canadian Society, Cancer Society, rather. I didn't elect him, and yet my tax dollars are spent to send, you know, 7, 12 different delegates all the way to exotic places like India, and then they come back and then they talk to my legislature and they say this is what we've signed on to at FCTC, at COP7, et cetera, and the whole alphabet soup. No one was elected. We paid for them to get there. Yeah. Then they come back and tell my legislator that I should be paying more taxes, that your company that is just supplying a demand needs to be subject to all these new regulations. Do you feel like there's something just inherently undemocratic about this process?
There is, but again, I need to go back to what's driving that. And I think, you know, we talk about the Canadian Cancer Society or Rob Cunningham, but there are other, like, anti-tobacco lobbyist groups. There have been, for example, plain packaging. They've been working on plain packaging since the 1980s, 90s. For them, it's a goal, and they're focused only on that. I'll give you a concrete example. The latest report from Health Canada says that 3% of kids in Canada right now are smoking on a regular basis cigarettes. 17% of kids are smoking marijuana, and 40% of kids are drinking alcohol. Yet, when that report came out, the Canadian Cancer Society came out with a press release asking for one thing: plain packaging on tobacco products.
Unbelievable.
And when Rob Cunningham was asked in a public consultation by the government what his position was on marijuana, he said, "I don't have a position."
Come on. Okay, so I want to pick up on this because now we're seeing a movement towards legalization of marijuana. We've seen the special task force come out and say these are the different rules. Essentially, it's a division of power. That's really all that they ruled on. Justin Trudeau, our Prime Minister, has promised sometime early in the new year we're going to get some legislation that basically makes it legal. I'm wondering what is the position of Imperial Tobacco?
Yeah, I mean, not for us and not for my company to say if the government should legalize or not marijuana, right? I mean, that's for the legislators to decide. The only thing is when you look at some of the reports or the recommendation from the task force yesterday, some of the approach is very pragmatic, right? They say we got to be careful not to put too much excise on marijuana so that we can compete with illegal traffickers. We've been saying this for years on tobacco.
Yeah, exactly.
We have, in Ontario right now, 40% of the market is illegal. In Northern Ontario, some reports say that 75% of the cigarette market is illegal. Yet government continue to increase excise. So that's where we're saying, you know, if you're going to do this on marijuana, why is tobacco treated differently? And again, I go back to the same thing. The reason is the lobbyist for anti-tobacco is well-funded, well-organized, and they're driving the agenda today in Canada, and that's what's happening.
All right, Eric, so there will be people out there who say, but big tobacco is also well-funded. They also are well-organized. Why is it that you are not affecting policy right now?
Yeah, I think right now it's not about funds, it's about access, right? And we've tried to have a dialogue with Health Canada. They don't want to meet with us. On the other side, we know that the anti-tobacco lobbyists are speaking with them on a regular basis. You saw it at COP, right? They're traveling with them. And so the only thing we're asking is if there's going to be regulation, we want the legislators to at least hear both sides of the stories and make an informed decision. And we don't believe that that's what's happening on tobacco today in Canada. When the government says that, you know, they want to protect kids, nobody's against a virtue. I have 2 kids. I don't want my kids to smoke, to be fair. But you have to get to a point where you need to realize that today's current environment provides sufficient information for adults to make an informed decision, and that, for example, plain packaging won't reduce smoking incidents in Canada. And that's what we're advocating for, is for reasonable regulation that will achieve public health.
Look, our audience is one that believes in personal responsibility and personal freedom, and so I could not emphasize your point enough, the fact that the information's available if you'd like to look into it and go ahead and take this risk and make this choice. When it comes to hearing both sides of the story, when I was at COP, I know that the tobacco industry was shut out, farmers were shut out, and the media was voted out. So what we're interested in doing here is hearing all sides of the story, and we're very, very thankful that you came and shared yours today, Eric.
Thanks a lot.